Good evening. We're about to start our December 2nd Planning Board meeting. Before we get started, I wanted to hope everyone had a lovely Thanksgiving, enjoyable spending time with their friends and family. So we have full board this evening, 2 are virtual and 3 are in person. And so our first item is a virtual planning board tour of Bethesda, which we're excited to hear about. And presenting that is Elsa Heisel McCoy of the Planning Department, and we also have Henry Coppola here from the Parks Department. Well, welcome.
Great, Chair Harris. Members of the board, thank you for that introduction. Again, for the record, Elsa Heisel McCoy, Chief Downton County Planning for the record. And Henry, I can never remember your title. Do you want
Henry Coppola, I'm the Long Range Planning Supervisor for the Parks Department.
to? That's much longer than Chief Downton County Planning. So, yeah. So. It's typical practice that we do a tour for the planning board in advance of a public hearing for a master plan. Given that the sort of narrow scope for the minor master plan amendment, we have done a virtual version that will focose on sort of the hits and opportunities still remaining since the 2017 plan. We'll have just a very brief introduction, and then we'll look at some area-wide transportation improvements, and then the Wisconsin Avenue and Established Centers District, the Emerging Centers District, and the Residential and Edge Districts. These are the districts that the Bethesda Downtown Plan breaks the downtown into. So the minor master plan amendment covers the same plan area as the 2017 Bethesda Downtown Plan. The goal of the amendment is to improve implementation of the current recommendations in the plan. There are no changes to specific zoning, park, or other recommendations. In terms of progress on the vision, there's been, as we'll see, new market and affordable housing, new office buildings and jobs. The image on the right shows the various types of approvals from the sketch plans in sort of the orangey yellow to the darker blue, which is site plans. And you can see that the approvals have really clustered along Wisconsin Avenue and up on Battery Lane. Those have been sort of the two centers that have really taken. And that with those, there's further progress. There are new parks that are in process and improvements to mobility for sidewalks, bike lanes, and transit, and we're going to take a look at some of those on our tour. So for area-wide transportation improvements, this is primarily the Capitol Crescent Trail running from Bethesda Avenue east. There's the tunnel route, which you see on your slide, which goes under the Wilson and the Elm under Wisconsin Avenue, and is planned to come out in Elm Street Park and then follow the Purple Line. And then there's also an on-street version. So what we're seeing here on the left is the Capitol Crescent Trail as implemented today at the intersection of Bethesda and Woodmont Avenue on the left. And then as we are heading down Bethesda Avenue towards Wisconsin, this is the spur that would take folks into the tunnel. Moving up Bethesda Avenue, these are improvements that were made through the CIP, but were funded by private, or in significant part by private development. So this is moving up Bethesda Avenue at the intersection with Wisconsin Avenue. There's a very elaborate sort of secondary system where you have the surface trail to the left in green and the pedestrian crosswalk to the right, and that crosses over and heads towards 47th Street, where it will make a left along Elm Street Park and then go up to the Purple Line. And so the image on the right is 47th Street looking west towards Wisconsin Avenue. Wisconsin Avenue and the established centers, as I mentioned before, this is where the bulk of the implementation has happened. And we have buildings to show you, park improvements and transportation improvements. So there have been almost 10 buildings that have been built along the Wisconsin Avenue corridor and in and in Woodmont Avenue. This image on the left I took last week and shows the I think that's the Elm. I think the Elm is the residential building, and then Metro Tower next to it, and then 7340 Wisconsin Avenue. So this is really the back of the development that's happening along Wisconsin Avenue. But you can also see sort of, the decade before, right around when the plan was approved in the JBG headquarters on the right, to some of the more recent development, or some of the slightly older development on the left. So starting at the southern end of Wisconsin Avenue, we have 7,000 Wisconsin Avenue with 181 residential dwelling units, 7,700 square feet of retail, with a park impact payment of about $900,000. This project included a through block connection that goes to the shown on the left, that goes to the alley behind it, and then behind it there's a series of brick garden-style apartments that have this porosity between this alley, and they even have some units that front on the alley. So that's a very nice improvement. The Wilson and the Elm, this was approved before the Bethesda downtown plan. This was the last minor master plan I worked on, which had an even longer name than the Bethesda downtown plan. This was the Bethesda Purple Line Station Minor Master Plan Amendment, or the BPLS MMPA, and had 456 dwelling units, 360,000 square feet of office, and 14,500 square feet of retail over an new and improved Purple Line Station that was able to expand multimodal access in terms of the Capitol Crescent Trail, and then the bike storage facility, which is very lovely, very nicely designed. Shillen Baranis did this and did a beautiful job. But this was before the downtown plan, so no park impact payment here. Then
Mr. Heisel McCoy,
please.
you said is in the previous slide, you said 456 drone units, or I didn't
Dwelling?
quite make out the word.
Dwelling, residential
Dwellings.
apartments.
Okay.
Dwelling. Sorry about that.
It's a mic issue over here. It almost sounded like you said drone, but it's dwelling. Okay, thank you.
Folks can do what they want in their units. No judgment here. So then, moving up Wisconsin Avenue, we have the Metro Tower apartment building with 366 units, 11,000 square feet of retail, and a park impact payment of $1.3 million. As you can see on the image here on the left, this is actually, I was out there more recently. They've topped off, so that is moving along. It's very exciting. Then next to that, 7340 Wisconsin Avenue. This is the former Exxon site that had many suitors come through, potential suitors come through before the match was made. 308 units, 3,400 square feet of retail, and $1.2 million in park impact payment. And then across the street from that, one of the first projects, I just want to say this is maybe the second project that came through the department after the plan was approved. This is the Avocet Tower, which has over 500,000 square feet of hotel and office, and a park impact payment of almost $2 million. And then they also implemented part of the Montgomery Avenue bike lanes, which we'll see in greater detail in a moment. And then this was the first project that came through after the 2017 plan was approved, the Marriott International headquarters with almost 1 million square feet of office and hotel uses, and a park impact payment of $5 million. And then moving into Woodmont Triangle, up Old Georgetown Road, 7607 Old Georgetown Road. A very lovely apartment building, 200 units, 1,700 square feet of retail, $1.1 million park impact payment. And then you can see on the left the Bethesda Heritage Trail, which a lot of that is above grade, and this building has access onto that, so it's got a street presence, but then also a plaza presence. Then the St. Elmo Apartments in the heart of Woodmont Triangle, 279 units, 6,000 square feet of retail, and a park impact payment of $1.3 million. This is also, they've topped out and are moving along very quickly in construction. And then the last development project in the Woodmont Triangle that's been built is 4915 Auburn Avenue, up near Battery Lane Urban Park, 175 units, 12,500 square feet of retail, and a park impact payment of about 650,000 square feet. The image on the left is a very nice through block connection, which if you go into this lovely space, leads you right out to Battery Lane Urban Park. There's a little sort of a piece of the building that comes out to Norfolk Avenue. This was still, the through block connection was still under construction, so I don't have a nicer image than that, but another very nice building. Okay, so then I'm just going to move through these, but Henry's here for questions if you have them. For parks in these corridors, we're really talking about two main spaces, the Capitol Crescent Civic Green, shown here. We're waiting on the Purple Line to finish their use of that space and then move into facility planning for that. And then the Veterans Park Civic Green up in Woodmont Triangle, and we're including this one because of the minor master plan amendment has specific recommendations to focus implementation excuse me, on this. So you have the existing Veterans Park in the green triangle on your left, and then in the yellow to the right is the building that the planning board approved that the Parks Department purchase with an eye to the redevelopment of that block. And so again, the recommendations in the plan specifically speak to encouraging implementation of this civic green. On the transportation front, in these core areas, we have bike lanes that have been implemented both on from the public and private dime. We have Woodmont Avenue bike lanes and the Montgomery Avenue bike lanes. So these are the Woodmont Avenue bike lanes, which go from Norfolk Avenue down through sort of the Bethesda Row area. And then the Montgomery Avenue bike lanes, which go from Woodmont Avenue. So in the image on the right, the building in the background, that's Woodmont Avenue. And then they go up the hill and then cross over Wisconsin Avenue. And this is these are the bike lanes that were implemented as part of the Avocet development that go up to the garage heading towards Pearl Street. So then emerging centers, so this is the Pearl District, sort of on the east side that include the area sort of between East-West Highway and the Capitol Crescent Trail, and then also Arlington South, so the area around Arlington Road, south of Bethesda Avenue. These were identified as emerging centers, and while we've had I think, we've had a couple of projects that have started implementation there. There's been no construction or movement on that front. As the board is aware, we've talked about this several times because we're very pleased about it. Along Montgomery Avenue, the Parks Department has purchased several properties for the Eastern Capitol Crescent Urban Greenway. And so that's very exciting. So again, as we've always said and acknowledged, we would certainly like this to go faster, but I think there's a lot to show here. So then moving finally on to the residential and edge districts, this is sort of the other area where we've had a lot of movement, particularly in Battery Lane. There's been a lot of plan approval. There's no construction there, so we don't have any buildings to show you. But in Arlington North and along the Eastern Greenway, We do have some buildings to show you and some park progress to talk about. So buildings, we have a few. So we have Azam Bethesda on Arlington Road. This is 230 units and a park impact payment of 1.4 million square feet. And then they also made a contribution to the amenity fund, which we've talked about. Then just behind it, in fact, you can see ZOM is this orange building here to the left in the background. You have the Edge on Woodmont Avenue with 154 units and a park impact payment of 1.2 million square feet. And then moving up to sort of the edge of the Battery Lane District, sort of just outside Woodmont Triangle, you have 8015 Old Georgetown Road, which is the redevelopment of the church site that was there. That was also sort of a long time coming. So very pleased to see this one out of the ground. 224 units with 73 live-work units and a park impact payment of $63,000. For park progress, this is very exciting. We have the Eastern Greenways and then the Caroline Freeland Park. So first we have the Caroline Freeland Urban Park upgrade. This was, I feel like this was just a few weeks ago, Henry?
Yeah, I think first or second week of November. I think some of you were there for this ribbon cutting we reopened.
Yeah, so that's great. So it's great to see so many kids and so many people out there, so that's very exciting. We look forward to repeating this on more sites across Bethesda. And to that end, I think, as we've pointed out during the board's regulatory review of cases, the Eastern Greenway, there's been a lot of progress on development approvals there that will include portions of the Eastern Greenway. This is the northern portion of the Eastern Greenway. So this is between Wisconsin Avenue and Tilbury Street, between Maple Avenue and sort of West Virginia Avenue. And the projects, these are projects that the board has approved. PLD lots 44 and 25 and 8001 Wisconsin Avenue that have significant residential units and some commercial space, and then dedication of land to the Eastern Greenway. So very excited about that. And then to close off the tour, Eastern Greenway South. So this is the extension of Elm Street Park and the parking lots down there. Can you remember the numbers? I never can.
On the spot, parking lots 10 and 24.
Yes, 10 and 24. Not to be confused with 25 and 44, which are on the north side. But there has been a lot of work between a lot of the stakeholders here. We have Mayor Lane from the town of Chevy Chase, who is a big contributor, in addition to the Parks Department and the county. I think there was some state funding and certainly private funding in making this deal happen. And so this is, if the weather were clement, we'd like to have you out there looking at the parking lots and thinking about that. In hopefully not too long, there'll be this great series of parks along 46th and 47th Street. So we'll leave you there on that note. That's the tour. Any questions on what's been happening?
Great, thank you so much. Any comments or questions from the board members?
I just have one question. I'm wondering that if we have a name for this Eastern Greenway Park South yet, maybe Henry knows. It's a beautiful park that we have in there. I do not know if there's any plan what it's going to be called.
So great question. Thank you, Commissioner Pidham. I don't think that we finalized it. We've been using Bethesda Market's the name of the associated development project there. And so the sort of working name's been Bethesda Market Park, but I know that there's been some comments in some of the public outreach meetings about working on a more creative name potentially. And we've had some public suggestions, and I think we're figuring out how to do that as part of this process continues to make sure we've got a great name for it.
Okay, thank you.
question about affordability. So all of the new apartment communities that were developed since the old plan wasn't available, are those all at 15% MPDUs? Okay, great, great. And the park?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember the park around near Battery Lane. Is that getting a facelift, or that as part of that whole Battery Lane piece, or is that, do you know what? I remember maybe 10 years ago they were talking about that. Do you have a sense of that one?
So I think Battery Lane Urban Park had gotten some minor renovations right around the time that the original Bethesda downtown plan was being finalized, which is one of the reasons that we didn't really include it as a project here. And then there was an additional playground upgrade project, which was separate. So it's had a couple of minor things, not to the same extent that Carolyn Friedland did, but, and then there's some other, I think, much more in the potential future if the plan has some recommendations for the potential expansion of it, and that's when it would really get the same kind of big-time upgrade.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you for this virtual tour. You know, it seems like a lot has progressed, and you know how development always goes in spurts. You know, you know, something happens, and it, you know, depends on the market, but looks like it's on a great projection, and I really appreciate this. I'm looking forward to the, you know, the parks behind the was it Elm Street Park where the women's market is. I know how important that is to the community to have that relocated a bit, and the parks in there after that development, as part of that development, and it's a lot of work, moving parts, but you know that's how development gets done. So, I appreciate that. Those are all the comments I have. Any other?
No major questions for me. Thanks for the tour. Well, now that I say that, I actually do have one small question, not a major one. But thinking about the greenways, you know, the greenways obviously are hugely, will be a hugely impactful piece of this plan for communities north-south and kind of looping around to where we have kind of existing bike infrastructure. And I'm wondering if you can just remind me how, so we have the Woodmont protected bike lanes going, well, eventually going north up to, I think, Battery Lane. We have the Eastern Greenway starting on kind of one block east of Wisconsin, the northern half going south from there, and probably then connecting down to where it kind of loops around to the high school, and maybe it technically ends there, but that'll kind of be a path that people take, and then if they want to get south from there, eventually they can cross over where we're buying up all those parcels next to the purple line, and that'll be kind of a connection there. But can you remind me what the plan is for the connection over Wisconsin on the north side? Like once Woodmont gets up to Battery Lane, what's the plan to help people go east-west across the busy Wisconsin to get over to the Eastern Greenway and vice versa?
I'm assuming you mean and for bike lanes?
For bike lanes, just more comfortable for bike lanes, or more comfortable for pedestrians too. I mean, obviously there's sidewalks there now, but that, you know, Battery Lane is a much busier street. It becomes much less busy, of course, once it becomes Rosedale on the eastern side of Wisconsin than it's in the neighborhood. But it's not a long section, but I'm just wondering kind of what the plan is for that connection point, if we do have one.
I mean, you do, so for so there are bike lanes along Battery Lane that will be implemented as part of the Battery District sort of sketch plan. In terms of crossing over Wisconsin Avenue, you know, at the major sort of four-way intersections, there are signalized crosswalks. There are not necessarily signalized crosswalks at every intersection. And I think that's been, you know, when we've looked at projects, done reviews for projects on Wisconsin Avenue, that's been certainly something that we've heard from the community, and that we've been working with State Highway, not always successfully, to get safer pedestrian connections across. But that's sort of an ongoing issue, I think, really all the way down to Bradley. And so I think the discussions are happening, but they haven't resolved quite yet.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. And now that you bring it up, Leah, those connection points across Wisconsin, this is obviously outside the scope of the minor master plan amendment, but since we're doing the virtual tour, it's a chance for us to talk about it. Those connections are tough. Those are really tough. And I know that MCDOT has put in a couple of, not hawk signals, but rapid, RF, the rapid flashing beacon signals that are kind of push activated. I think those are somewhat helpful. Obviously, it's still a lot of lanes to cross, and cars often don't stop. I know there's a new light that just went in kind of on the midway up Wisconsin. I can't remember the cross street there, but yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because it's a reminder that, Wisconsin is such a division. It's such a hard line that obviously does have signalized crossing opportunities, but still tough and long blocks at times, and still hard to get across. So it's just a good reminder as we think about implementing and think about like future CIP, and eventually, I guess this will probably be part of Flash BRT coming south. Knock on wood in the future, and maybe that's another opportunity to think about kind of better infrastructure. But yeah, Wisconsin's a tough one just in terms of connectivity and safety. So just more to think about there for us.
Commissioner Bartley, you have any questions, comments? We can't hear you.
The only comment I have to build upon what Mr. Heisel McCoy said in passing is that there's discussions with the DOT with regards to pedestrian crossings. And I just find it hard to believe that Department of Transportation doesn't seek to resolve the issue with pedestrian crossings with more expediency, taking into consideration all the new high-density housing that's going into place and the county's initiative for safer streets and the pedestrian master plan. And I would just like to see more participation and exigency on the part of the Department of Transportation to get these crossways done for pedestrians.
Okay, thank you so much. And one last question I would have, you mentioned emerging centers, and how did that definition come about? Was it, was it like places where it looks like there could be growth, or, on the west side, and then a little bit to the north? Is it because at the time there were some plans for development review, and could you just talk a little bit about how the emerging centers became named emerging centers, right?
Sure. So, whenever there is, master plans are 20-year vision documents, and so whenever those conversations start, I think, you have property owners who are looking for their long-term interests. And I think, in the areas along the southern part of Arlington Road and in the Pearl Street, you had, I think you have underdeveloped properties. They're existing commercial properties. I think some of them have been redeveloped. There's a 2-story car dealership that replaced a 1-story car dealership, and even there was a multifamily building down there that has an auto dealership on the first floor. So I think the idea was that there was enough interest there in higher density development, but Pearl Street is essentially, that district is sort of a block and a half, 2 blocks, and it's on the tracks and sort of next to the air rights building. And so there's sort of a special case. It's a relatively small district. I think, we've had a number of discussions with the folks who own the property there that include the formerly known as Bethesda Sport and Health. It's something else now.
Right.
But so I think there's a lot of potential there in both of those areas. And so the idea was that there would be that there could be more higher density development there, but that it wouldn't. It's not an established center. So I think that was the general idea.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate this virtual tour. I know everyone, the community, the planning developers will be delighted when the Purple Line is completed. It would help finish some of these parks here, because all across the county, and in Silver Spring, and then Tacoma area, Langley Park area, when that gets done, we're really, really having our fingers crossed. It'll really help to spur the completion of things and to spur the revitalization of some of these areas. So thank you so much.
Into that.
Yeah, and we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we will start with our public hearing this evening, which is the Bethesda Minor Master Plan public hearing. So thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. We're on our second and last item of the evening, Bethesda Minor Master Plan Public Hearing. To kick us off, before we start, any testimony, I'd like Elza Heisel McCoy to talk us through this, what we're going to do today and the process, okay?
Great, Chair Harris, thank you very much. I have a statement of record for the Bethesda Downtown Plan Minor Master Plan Amendment Public Hearing for December 2nd, 2024. For the record, I am Elza Heisel McCoy, Chief of Down County Planning with Montgomery Planning. This public hearing is for the Bethesda Downtown Plan Minor Master Plan Amendment, which was advertised in the Washington Times on November 1st, 2024. The Bethesda Downtown Plan Minor Master Plan Amendment Public Hearing Draft is a technical update to the 2017 Bethesda Downtown Plan and also amends Thrive 2050, the county's general plan as amended. I'd like to enter into the public record the following documents: the 2017 approved and adopted Bethesda Downtown Plan, Thrive Montgomery 2050, approved and adopted October 2022, Bethesda Downtown Plan Minor Master Plan Amendment Scope of Work, approved by the Planning Board June 2024, and Bethesda Downtown Plan Minor Master Plan Amendment Public Hearing Draft, as approved by the Planning Board in October 2024. I am also entering into the public record the following correspondence: a letter transmitting the public hearing draft to the County Council President, Andrew Friedson, dated November 1st, 2024, a letter transmitting the public hearing draft to the County Executive, Mark Elrich, dated November 1st, 2024, a copy of the newspaper ad and the affidavit of publication from the Washington Times, which is a certified proof of publication in the paper's November 1, 2024 issue, all written testimonies received since October 24, 2024, when the Planning Board approved the publication of the public hearing draft and set the public hearing date of December 2nd, 2024. With that, staff recommends that the public record remain open until December 9th, 2024, for one additional week at the close of business. And that completes my statement for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Heisel McCoy, for that information, and we'll get started with our public testimony. We have, for my record, we have 6 participants this evening in person and 3 virtual. When I call your name, when you come up, we'll do as many as we can in one sitting. Irene Lane, David Barnes, Dedham Ingram, Jack Alexander, and Richard Hoy. It seems like we have more people in the audience. There is someone signed up to participate that we don't have on our list here in person. Okay, thank you. So we'll start with Ms. Lane. Could you state your name, and then you're representing the town of Chevy Chase, so you have 6 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Irene Lane, and I serve as the mayor of the town of Chevy Chase. I appreciate the opportunity to provide comments on the Bethesda Downtown Plan's Minor Master Plan Amendment. At the outset, I would like to thank the Planning Department, particularly Elza Heisel McCoy, for facilitating several community meetings over the past several months. The Bethesda Downtown Plan's overarching goal of enhancing Bethesda aligns well with the county's broader objective of improving residents' quality of life. However, the proposal to eliminate the development cap raises 2 key concerns. First, a significant portion of the approved development remains unbuilt, leaving its cumulative impact unknown. Second, the absence of an alternative mechanism to evaluate whether the plan's objectives are being achieved on a holistic basis introduces uncertainty about how progress will be tracked and managed, and how any systemic recommendations could be made or considered. To address these issues, we recommend implementing periodic, data-driven, holistic reviews of cumulative development impacts, incorporating opportunities for community input. While tools like the site plan reviews for specific projects, monitoring reports, and the growth and infrastructure policy metrics are useful, they often provide isolated data points or operate at too broad a level to offer meaningful insights into the impacts on activity centers like Bethesda. Residents are seeking an approach that enables broader recommendations beyond a project-by-project review. This approach would involve establishing clear benchmarks, a baseline for current conditions, and a framework to assess progress in meeting key goals. These goals include maintaining acceptable school capacity, enhancing transportation options in red policy areas, creating parks, expanding affordable housing options, and fostering job creation, considered collectively. For example, the community space along Elm Street has significantly benefited local retailers. Could similar spaces be incorporated into future planning? Additionally, while new bike paths have been built and more are planned, how often are they being used? We share a goal of preserving affordable housing, but how is that being achieved in practice? The recent MMPA outreach process underscores the importance of periodic reviews, especially as several recommendations, such as increasing the park impact payment and eliminating the use or lose provision, have come to the forefront. These issues typically would not arise in project-specific reviews, monitoring reports, or through GIP metrics. We believe a holistic review process for Bethesda as an activity center should be established before the Planning Board considers removing the Bethesda Overlay Zone development cap. Such a process would enhance future decision-making on density and development as the underlying plan ages. If periodic reviews indicate that goals are not being met or that unintended consequences have emerged, adjustments could be made to align with the plan's vision. Conversely, if the reviews show that goals are being met effectively, they could guide future expansions or enhancements in amenities and infrastructure. Another issue that could be addressed with holistic reviews is that the MMPA's current assertions lack sufficient data and actionable strategies for achieving key goals. For instance, the report suggests that employment growth will outpace population growth in Bethesda, but provides no supporting data. Is this assumption based on current work-from-home trends, or does the planning department anticipate a shift as more companies return to the office? The report projects a 24% population growth over the plan's 20-year horizon, with a 17% increase already observed in the activity center population between 2017 and 2022, well before most approved residential projects have been constructed. Residents need a clear understanding of the projected population growth under the current development cap versus the 3 analyzed growth scenarios or the complete removal of the cap. Unfortunately, the appendix does not offer an explanation for the number of residential units and the number of commercial space anticipated in the various zones that make up the downtown area in each of the growth scenarios. While the monitoring report includes project-specific data, residents would benefit from updated cumulative information on the total amount of commercial and residential space completed, under construction, or planned. Simply put, without holistic reviews conducted periodically and in conjunction with community input, eliminating development cap risks undermining the plan's goals and leaves no assurance that transportation metrics will be assessed, nor that promised amenities will be delivered. Regular reviews based on updated data would enable adaptive and responsive development policies. To this end, in addition to the metrics tracked in the monitoring report for the Bethesda Downtown Plan, we propose a list of additional economic, social, infrastructure, accessibility, environmental, real estate development, economic equity, quality of life, and economic resilience data points for these holistic reviews. We recommend compiling this data now and updating it either every 5 years or after 10 million square feet of development has been constructed. Ideally, this approach would be applied countywide, not just limited to Bethesda. A data-driven, holistic review process will build confidence that growth is being managed responsibly and in alignment with both current needs and future aspirations. Thank you for considering these recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor Lane. Next is David Barnes.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I'm speaking on behalf of the Edgemoor Citizens Association, a community association of approximately 500 homes immediately west of the Central Business District in Bethesda. Living where we do, we enjoy all the many benefits of being very close to a thriving urban area, but we also experience some of the frustrations and challenges as that area continues to grow. When I first read the public hearing notice for this session, this proposed amendment sounded so benign. A minor amendment to the Bethesda Downtown Plan, just some technical updates to improve parks, transportation, and infrastructure, funds for a new rec center, funds for affordable housing, sounded great. And then I read it and I discovered that it was hardly minor and that it proposes to achieve these wonderful things primarily by eliminating the BOS cap and adding even more development to downtown Bethesda. I'm not saying that the notice was deliberately misleading, but it was misleading. It limited the public's ability to know what you're proposing, and except for those few who might be willing to invest the time in tracking down the report, reading and learning its arcane language. But the notice also limited your ability to learn what the public thinks about this idea. I'm willing to bet that when you did your community engagement a few months ago, you didn't hear a single member of the public clamoring to suggest higher density and more development in Bethesda. Rather, they wanted to lessen the negative effects of the development that's already underway. Sure, more development means more PIPs and fees to pay amenities, but packing Bethesda with more development is a double-edged sword. But you never know that from reading this amendment. It has little discussion of any potential downsides, such as additional strains on the schools, roads, infrastructure, et cetera. I think that you owe it to the residents of Bethesda and to the county council, for that matter, to make clear and address both the pros and the cons of this plan, especially since the point of the cap was to assure people who were worried about overdevelopment that it was a finite limit and that planners recognized that unlimited development was unwise. That's one of the main reasons communities like mine came to support that plan. Yet, even though this draft focuses so heavily on the potential benefits of new development, it still really doesn't tell us what the upside might be. It promises additional funds. How much? What portion of the costs of these great projects are they going to cover? Where will the rest of the money come from? How much has the county raised under the current density cap, and where does that go? The report mentions that half of that money goes to support other parts of the county, and how much is that? And why doesn't more of it stay in Bethesda, which absorbs the impacts of that development? And even if the cap is really too low, why do you want to remove it entirely and send a message of allowing unrestrained development? None of this is explained, and it's not possible to determine or reasonably estimate what lifting the cap might mean in terms of funding, density, and infrastructure needs. You don't explain how the supposedly insufficient square footage already approved, how much of it has been completed or is still under development or is just simply met an approval. They're all lumped together. And you don't say what development to the full permitted height with no cap might mean for Bethesda. Finally, this draft amendment also proposes to continue the existing practice of monitoring transportation, school, and other infrastructure impacts and needs. But as anyone who's lived here for a while knows, that process is fundamentally flawed. It results in a chronic disconnect between new growth and the infrastructure needed to support it. Nobody really seems ready to do anything about that or even admit that it's a problem. So the status quo continues. Parents who send their kids to BCC cluster schools, especially Bethesda Elementary, know that the MCPS projections about school population growth and seat surpluses have always been and remain disconnected from reality. So even if you're not willing to take on that problem, I hope that you'll rethink this amendment with more balance. And then if you still think the $3.24 million square foot cap is insufficient, set a new cap, don't remove it, clearly explain what that higher cap is and why it's needed and what it might mean, and then please require regular monitoring to track the results. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Barnes. Next will be Dedham Ingram.
I'm Jack Alexander. I'm here with Dedham Ingram as co-chairs of the IAC. I'm going to go first, and Dedham's going to go second, and we are definitely going to do our 6 minutes.
Okay, and then also, Ms. Rogers, you can come up here. Thank you.
So basically, the IAC was formed after the master plan was done in 2017. It's got 7 commercial members and 7 residential members. And the commercial members range from land use lawyers to some of the biggest property owners in Bethesda, BF Saul, Donahoe, Federal Realty's been on it. And the residential members, they live in Edgemore, they live in East Bethesda, they live in apartment buildings in Bethesda. So the 14 of us have been meeting, we meet every Friday, and on this particular issue, we've met with Elsa on numerous occasions, who's been a great help to help us understand it. And we have submitted a letter of testimony that you guys have from November 22nd, and I don't want to read that, but we're going to touch on a couple things. As far as the cap, based on a variety of reasons, the IAC thinks that the cap should go away, and the big reason is to provide certainty for developers and investors and the people that want to come to develop in Bethesda, because that is a long process, and if you start on it in 1 year, it could take 4 or 5 years to get a building built, and to have the rug pulled out from under you because of the cap just wasn't make sense. We were unanimous in agreement that a check-in during the next phase of this thing is welcome. The exact mechanics of that, we'll let you guys figure out, but we're totally in favor of checking in and keeping up on that. And that really is the gist of what I had to say. So, Deedham, you want to go from there?
Okay. Okay, I'm going to address the comments that the committee had related to parks. So as you probably know, new parks are the primary overarching goal of the Bethesda Downtown Plan. The plan proposed 13 new parks comprising 13 new acres of parkland. Under the plan, about 7 million square feet of new development has been approved for Bethesda, and Bethesda's population has increased by 17%. But none of the new parkland identified in the plan has been delivered. We make a number of recommendations about parks. First, the IX suggested, as part of the minor master plan amendment work this past year, that Montgomery County Parks and Planning work with the IAC to review park priorities in the plan. This did not happen, but we continue to advocate for this and believe such a review would be useful. Second, we urge Montgomery County Parks to be open to the acquisition of properties for parks that are not specified in the plan now. And third, we urge acceptance of parks created through privately owned, public open space, as opposed to through dedication to the Parks Department. Recognizing the high cost of developing the new Bethesda parks and the limited capacity of the CIP, the plan established the Park Impact Payment, PIP, to partially fund the new parks. The PIP was never intended to cover all of the costs of developing the new parks. Rather, the plan recommended identification of new financing mechanisms to provide the needed funds for the parks. To date, no other funding mechanisms have been identified, and it appears that the county is relying solely on the PIP to provide the needed funding for Bethesda's parks. Additionally, the minor master plan recommendations suggest a new burden for the limited PIP funds, namely using PIP funds to pay for the recreation center that's proposed in the plan. The IAC urges Parks and Planning to explore creative public-private partnership opportunities for delivering the new parks. Regarding the PIP rate, the IAC supports the proposed increase in the PIP rate. However, our support is conditional on provision of a predictable and feasible metric for increasing the rate over time. And our support is also conditional on the county seeking to identify additional local, state, and federal funding sources for park development in Bethesda. The MMPA draft report noted that Bethesda generates a considerable amount of income for the county. The IAC would like to go on record to state that we believe that it is inappropriate for a disproportionate portion of those funds to be used outside Bethesda. And finally, the IAC would like to note that we believe that it is critical that park development in Bethesda keep pace with new development in Bethesda, so that Bethesda's appeal to developers, businesses, and current and future residents continues into the future. Thank you for your consideration of those remarks. And I would like to take my hat off as the chair of the co-chair of the IAC and just say, on a personal level, as a member as a resident of Montgomery County and as a statistician, that I was quite disappointed and agree with many of the comments that David Barnes made about the contents of the draft report. I think it really needs to be beefed up before it's finalized, And I would also note that there are a number of inaccuracies and errors in the report that should be corrected before this report goes final. I would think that the planning department, which prides itself on its very stellar work, would want to see that those corrections be made. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony and for tag teaming there for the IAC. Thank you so much. All right, next is Richard Howell. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Richard Hoy. I live just outside of Battery Lane on Old Georgetown Road. Been a resident for 40 years, a retired firefighter for the county. My father had his headquarters at Norfolk and St. Elmo in a two-story building that's now a furniture design store for many, many, many years. So I look upon Bethesda as a place that has memories of generations of the Hoy family. I have stayed here because of its urbanity and of its opportunity to fulfill that promise that came with the location of the Bethesda Metro Station in 1984. I support the plan and the removal of a development cap. I am keenly aware of the streetscape and traffic issues and circulation patterns. As someone who is car-free in a household that has 3 people, adults, car-free, working people. I appreciate the destinations that have grown with the development of Bethesda and the ambiance and the skyline. It is finally something that is really uplifting to see a new, higher skyline above the 50s rabble that was there in the past. I believe we need to look at the needs of Bethesda in a more complete manner. I've listed quite a few recommendations in my correspondence up until 12 o'clock. If I knew I had to 12:30, I would have put in more. But what we need to do is look at this in a systematic fashion, much like we're looking at the parks, and fund it in that fashion. And I see this as a missing element in the plan. We should look at the major intersections as needing improvement, the 5-way intersection, Old Georgetown, Whistling, Arlington, St. Elmo. That is a major barrier. It can be redesigned for better traffic and pedestrian safety. We should be looking at pedestrian circulation to remove the restrictions that the school system imposes on Bethesda Elementary School students. Students in many areas, including my neighborhood, which is within a half mile of the school, cannot walk to school. They are bused. We need to have the plan address that. That is a failure in the circulation pattern of Bethesda. It needs to be identified, narrative needs to be taken, and it needs to be fixed. We need to have the metro station designed as a gateway, and we need to have language and ideas for that put forth. We need to have a corridor-wide speed reduction. We can support 20-mile-per-hour speed limits on the major roads and 15 on the minor roads. Norfolk Avenue, you cannot drive 25. That is absurd. You can't do it. So I have many other recommendations, and I believe that we need to have more growth, more housing, and not rely on naturally occurring housing. We need to have new housing. Naturally occurring housing has to be coupled with new pedestrian connections that it did not have in its auto-centric design, which becomes a barrier for the same people we're trying to serve. So with that, and my time is out, I'll close. Thank you all very much for your hard work. I know that every plan is, we think of as the plan you ought to focus on and give your most attention to, but you do this all day. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoy, and Ms. Rogers.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Harris and members of the board. For the record, Elizabeth Rogers. I'm testifying today on behalf of an owner of several properties that are located at the intersection of Arlington Road and Montgomery Lane. I submitted written testimony into the record, but just wanted to summarize that tonight. The property that I'm speaking on behalf of is currently underutilized and is uniquely situated for residential infill redevelopment. However, the property's location outside of the height incentive area really doesn't provide any meaningful incentive to provide additional MPDUs with that residential redevelopment. As the board is aware, affordable housing is one of the primary goals of the Bethesda Downtown Plan, listed as one of the 4 overarching goals. But unlike other areas of the county, Bethesda has a higher threshold for incentivizing MPDUs and allowing properties to achieve MPDU height bonus. You have to provide more than 17.5% MPDUs and be located in the height incentive area in order to qualify for that additional height. The current height incentive area is too restrictive along the Arlington Road corridor. That's the height incentive area is established within the BAWS itself. And we're requesting that the boundaries of that height incentive area be expanded to encompass the property and those immediately surrounding it. And the testimony I've submitted has an exhibit which shows our proposed expansion. This expansion will not have negative impact on those properties that are immediately surrounding it. Notably, the proposed expansion is buffered from the single-family homes just outside the CBD by several county kind of owned and controlled land, including Arlington Road itself, the Bethesda Library site, and the Bethesda Elementary School site. In fact, the closest edge of the nearest single-family home, as measured to the back of the rear yard, is more than half the length of a football field away, approximately 190 feet. The modest additional 12 feet of bonus height that would be available would have limited perceived impact on the surrounding properties, particularly given the design controls that the Bethesda Design Guidelines provide. As it relates to this property in question, the MPDU bonus height would allow for only a modest increase from 60 feet to 72 feet in height, which is comparable with the existing condominium building located immediately beside it, which was approved for 70 feet. There's already also a diversity of height within this area. Many of the buildings are much taller, including a 150-foot tall Edgemont 2 building, which was recently constructed at the intersection of Edgemore and Woodmont Avenue. As such, the modest additional height that would be allowed on this property and those few remaining development sites would not be out of character with the surrounding area. Yet this change will help to incentivize additional affordable housing in downtown Bethesda. Our written testimony also touched on the park impact payment and density cap. As expressed in our letter, we don't recommend further increases in the PIP payment, but are very supportive of staff's modification regarding the timing, which recognizes that extra financial burden that an upfront payment has for development. We also support planning staff's recommendation to eliminate the cap altogether. This change provides needed certainty to ensure that desirable additional development continues in Bethesda. I appreciate your consideration of our comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Now we'll go to our 3 virtual participants, Hannah Hutton, Brian Cannon, and Patricia Harris, in that order.
Hi.
Yes.
My name is Hannah Hutton. You guys can hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. So thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening in support of the MMPA as a resident of East Bethesda. I wanted to commend the research, outreach, and the thoughtful collaboration behind this plan. I'm sure it wasn't easy bringing together planning, parks, developers, affordable housing advocates, and all the other stakeholders. And you guys put together a plan that both honors their priorities and aligns with the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan. A growing Bethesda is a great thing, and I view the construction we see today as a sign of progress, representing new opportunities for residents, businesses, and visitors to experience a more vibrant and a more inclusive community. I also want to emphasize the importance of affordable housing for our workforce and their families. I loved seeing the incentives for developers to build family-sized units, deeply affordable units, and to preserve the existing naturally occurring affordable housing. A Bethesda where people can live close to where they work will reduce commute times, it decreases transportation-related emissions, and it'll reduce traffic. Affordable housing is essential to making Bethesda not just a place to work or visit, but a place where everyone can succeed. That being said, as Bethesda grows, it's critical to ensure that the existing community infrastructure is not left behind. So our county departments and agencies must have the necessary budget funding to serve both our current and future residents. We need to avoid a situation where developers receive their incentives, but county departments and agencies don't have the resources to carry out their components of the plan, like we heard about with parks. So another example of that, while I welcome the idea of a new recreation center in Bethesda, many of the existing recreation facilities in our county are overdue for much needed renovations and need to remain a priority before new projects get to move forward. This amendment overall continues to build on the strong foundation of the original downtown plan. It balances growth with sustainability, equity, and livability, and I'm really excited to see it move forward and urge your continued support for this important initiative. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hutton. Next is Brian Cannon.
Hi, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I am representing myself, although I am confident that I have many neighbors who would agree with what I have to say. I and my neighbors live 4 blocks south of downtown Bethesda along Wisconsin Avenue in a neighborhood that is served only by that road. What happens to Bethesda will have a huge consequences for my community and many others like that. So I'm opposed to the elimination of development caps without rigorous understanding of what impacts those will place on the transportation network, particularly the vehicular transportation network that runs through our communities. I believe that we don't have currently the ability to absorb the increases in density and traffic congestion that lifting the development cap would cause. As you can tell, I think traffic along 355 is the biggest challenge. Wisconsin Avenue is a major commuter artery into the district, as well as a vital link in our towns. There are 66 cross streets. Few of them are appropriately signalized, intersecting Wisconsin Avenue between the Beltway and the district. These are really difficult to navigate, especially when the heavy flow of traffic at the beginning of and the end of the day is at its most intense. Wisconsin Avenue is essentially an extension of the Beltway all the way down to the district line during rush hour. And we have a lot of neighborhoods struggling to interact with it. Adding the density that you envision, I think, will likely make this challenging situation difficult, if not untenable. And I think there would be very few fixes available if you didn't study this condition in conjunction with lifting the development cap before you lift it. Any change in the development cap, I think, really needs to be generated in conjunction with a rigorous and honest transportation planning effort for the entire Wisconsin Avenue corridor. I don't think it will, it's set up to simply adjust to changing circumstances. It's a road system that was designed 80 years ago and hasn't substantially been enhanced as the density of development has increased. Thank you very much for the opportunity to state an opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. And our last participant is Patricia Harris.
Good evening, Chair Harris and Planning Board members. For the record, Pat Harris with Lartrillian Brewer. I'm here this evening on behalf of ProMark Partners, the owners of almost 3 acres of land at the intersection of Montgomery Avenue and Pearl Street. ProMark is in the early stages of planning a mixed-use development in that location and submitted written comments, but I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight those comments. I think it's safe to say that the following comments are shared by our other clients with an interest in downtown Bethesda. Most importantly, we support the amendment's recommendation to eliminate the development cap. ProMark has firsthand experience of the negative effects of the threat of a development cap. It is virtually impossible to provide an investor who perceives a threat of a cap with the necessary assurances that the cap would not be reached at some point in the approval process. And irrespective of the actual threat of the moratorium imposed as a result of the development cap, investors are risk adverse, and if they have a limited amount of capital to invest, they'll simply divert it to a site or jurisdiction where there is no development cap and a threat does not exist. In Promark's situation, the potential investor walked away. Importantly, the amendment demonstrates that the cap is not necessary and there will be adequate public facilities to accommodate the anticipated development. And each site does go through an adequate public facilities analysis in any event. Second, we urge the board to exercise restraint in considering any increase in the park improvement payment. The proposed increase to $15.57 represents a 50% increase in the PIP since its inception in 2017. Moreover, the basis for the increase is tied to the increases in construction costs, but park improvement costs are different than construction costs. There's less specialized labor, the materials are different, and tying the increases to construction costs falsely inflates the cost of park construction. In addition, as I know you have heard many times, it's the cumulative effect of the various fees, be they the impact taxes, WSSC fees, off-site transportation improvements, or the PIP that can effectively sink a project. In terms of the timing of the payment of the PIP, we're encouraged by the recommendation in the plan, but we'd ask that the planning board consider moving the entire payment to the time of final inspection of the building, as the council is currently considering with respect to the payment of impact tax payments. And then finally, we support the amendment's recommendation to eliminate the use it or lose it provision tied to the approval of a site plan. We appreciate your efforts and happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. We have no other participants this evening. We really appreciate all of those that participated in person or virtually. It's important to hear your voices. So thank you so much. And do we have some closing remarks by planning? Or
So the only thing I would reiterate is that the written record will stay open for one more week. So you have one more week to get your, a little less than one more week, COB next Monday, to get written comments into the MCP chair address.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eisel McCoy. This ends our planning board meeting for today. Thank you so much. Safe travels home.
Thank you.